Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
All right, we are here, and it is a pleasure to be joined by Mike Detillier. And of course, we rely on Mike to give us all kind of information on sports, especially when it comes to the draft. And Mike, good to see you again.
Same here, Martin. I'm doing good.
Yeah, I hadn't seen you in a while, but I was thinking about you. I was driving to Monroe last week for the tennis tournaments, and I said, when I heard Mason Smith was going pretty high up, I said, you know, Mike called that a few years ago, and you had a lot of doubters when you said Mason Smith's going to be a high draft choice, but it ended up being true.
Yeah, Mason's had a wild career at LSU. He was the #1 rated high school player in the country. Comes out, has a really big-time freshman year. He's a freshman All-American. 4 plays into his sophomore year, jumps up, tears up his knee. Last year, I thought he was disappointing. He didn't look the same. But there was a lot of coaching changes along the defensive line. His technique, he plays a little high. They get under his pads and move him around. But he can rush the quarterback. And there are not a lot of 6'5" plus, 310-pound guys that can run like Mason. Martin, I probably got calls from 8 different executives in the NFL about Mason. It was all the same question about him. And fortunately, halfway into his junior year, Pete Jenkins comes to town. And I think it helped Mason with his technical skills. And he's a big man who can run. You got to be patient with him because still he's a little bit of a puppy football-wise, technically. But he's got a lot of ability. I do know one thing, he would be well coached at Jacksonville. Ryan Nielsen, who was the Saints defensive line coach, he was with Atlanta last year. He's going to be the coordinator, defensive line coach. He's going to help Mason out a lot. And Matt House, who was El Lauzio as the coordinator for LSU last year, he's on that staff as the linebackers coach. So there was a connect the dots with Mason, with Matt House. Ryan just got to pick up a phone, and you know who he can call. Pete Jenkins, you know, and so it's a great fit for Mason. I think if you're patient with him, he's got a chance to be a really good football player. And I mean, we think about Louisiana. I know we always talk about this. We would love to be #1 in education. We would be #1 in creating jobs. We've sunk a bunch of money into that. That hasn't changed throughout our lifetime. It's basically stayed the same. Only 4 states produce more draft choices than the state of Louisiana. Think about Texas, California, Florida, Georgia. Louisiana produced 5. They're in the 5 spot. Just think about that. This little bitty state
in itself.
Basically, we're in the sports business at this point. And to think of Mason being one of those 12 right here in our backyard, so to speak. So I remember him coming on to our Sports on the Bayou. And so Hebert's sitting where I'm sitting at now. And he looks at me, he's like, Mike, first time I ever seen him. He's a giant. And he's a big man, well-spoken, smart young man. He had a great career at Terrebonne. And I wish it had ended a little bit differently at LSU because you saw all the potential that he had, but he made the right choice. Second-round pick, 4 years, close to $7 million is what you're going to get out of that. Now, your second contract, as I've always told him, that's when you really cash in.
Now, and before the break, I want to get this in. He has a lot of people that he could call and say, okay, Carl Morgan, for one who played with me, he played 5 years in the NFL. So Mason has some people he could lean on, and Carl and Gerard and his other relatives on the other side who are very smart and also good at business. so they can sort of tell him the do's and don'ts. Because naturally, when you get drafted in the second round and you got that high dollar in front of him, he's going to have more friends than he knows what to do with.
Well, you got to have to say no, okay? And it's difficult sometimes. People that have been around you saying, hey, I need money for this or that. But one thing I do know about Mason, I say the same thing about Bobby J. If Mason ends his NFL career and don't have money, they change currency in the United States. Mason's always going to be real good with his money.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think the NFL now has courses that they make you go through, or seminars, because we've seen a lot of people get a lot of money in the early days and they lost it all. So they put them on programs.
Yeah, they try to help them out on investments. This is not always going to be.
Jim Finks was great at that.
Jim tried to lead guys into saying, hey, look, one day it's going to stop. And, you know, Bobby always says, the real world sucks, Mike. They don't pay me like they did. Okay, I get that. You were a multimillionaire playing guy in the NFL. They're not going to pay you that, so to speak, in the outside world. But I think Mason will handle that well, fame and fortune. Some guys, it's really difficult, really difficult for them.
But he's going to do good. It's great to see a local guy get it. It seems like just yesterday we were watching him at LSU. And I remember you saying he's going to go high. He's going to go high. I hadn't quite yet seen him develop, but he certainly developed, like you said, his freshman year at LSU. So what we'll do, we'll take a break. I want to find out what you think about the Saints draft and how they did. And I know you know all the inside information. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we got an expert on the desk here. He'll bring us through it. Mike Detillier, as always, he's our host for Sports on the Bayou, and he does a lot of other shows, and we rely on him for a lot of information here. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
All right, we're back. We talked a lot about Mason Smith on the first segment, but let's switch gears a little bit with Mike Detillier. And, of course, you know he's going to know everything that's happening with the Saints. So how do you think – let's get right into it. How did the Saints do in their drafts?
I think they did a solid job. I like the first two picks. After that's developmental guys and fit guys. Because, okay, that's only maybe 4 or 5 guys in every draft. No matter where they end up, the play production is going to be the same. Everything else is fit. Right. And so I put a lot of emphasis on that. But I do know one thing. The first-round pick, barring any serious injury, Taliesin Fuaga from Oregon State, he's going to play. Yeah. He's a right tackle, power player, and I would be surprised if he's not an immediate starter for them. I have a lot of reservations on if Ryan Ramczyk will ever play again.
Really?
The knee injury is really serious.
God.
And so we'll see with that. But so I think Fuaga will come in and he'll be your right tackle. I thought he was the best run blocker of all the tackles in this draft class. But what I asked him that night when we got him on sold me really big on him. And I liked him before. He said, Mr. Mike, I'm working on my front kick step as a pass protector. Bang. And so somebody who watches all this technical stuff, that's the one thing I thought he really needed to work on. Everybody thinks it's your back kick step, but it's the front. You kick with that, you get back to mirror a guy, and you put your hands on him, and you steer him.
Right.
That's what he was working on. And he's a nasty guy out on the field.
And he comes with a lot of work ethic.
High work ethic. He was not a highly recruited football player coming out of high school. He sat the first 2 years. He played for a coach that felt, okay, seniority gets you the job. Man, seniority, man, give me the best player. He took over for that right tackle position, end of story. And he was a mainstay. He goes to the Senior Bowl, didn't have to be. He was my 11th ranked player. So why would I go to the Senior Bowl? I can't really raise my stock up too much. He went, and he dominated at the Senior Bowl. Went to the combine, did every workout, every deal there. Goes to show you he's one of these guys that's got the chip on his shoulder every time. Hey, y'all say I couldn't play? I'm going to show you just how good I am.
Right. Now, how does he come injury-wise? Did he have a history of injury?
No.
Or is he good?
No, he's been relatively clean for a big man. Nixon scrapes, you playing with that.
Right, yeah.
But no major injury. And now he's laid out some major injuries. And he laughed about, I got 3 personal foul calls against me just because I knocked a guy over out in the open field. And the referee thought I took a cheap shot at him. But you watch the film, it's not what happened.
Just doing his job.
Well, the 210-pound safety got in the way of the 325-pound guy, and he just mowed him over. And so sometimes that happens. But I think he's a really good player and a fit player for a team that, man, they can't run the football worth a lick, and he'll help you.
And they need to. But Dennis Allen's a defensive coach, we know. So he went offense off the top. So, but he has a lot of instruction, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's got 2 veteran offensive line coaches that gave the 2 thumbs up that he's the guy. I didn't know if he'd be there when the Saints picked. Fortunately, 6 quarterbacks, unprecedented, go in the top 12, bing, and he's there for you.
Yeah, what do you think about the overall pick? Of course, Jaden Daniels didn't go. Was that, I guess, expected?
Yeah, I thought he'd be the 2nd pick in the draft. Caleb came out with all the hype. He was the man coming out of high school. Yeah. He replaced the man that was the man before. Spencer Rattler, who the Saints picked in round 5, he was the #1 rated high school player in the country. He goes to Oklahoma, has a redshirt season, starts as a redshirt freshman, did a good job. They recruit Caleb Williams. Well, it didn't take long for Spencer to figure out, I'm in trouble. So he goes to South Carolina. Different style players, but I like Caleb a lot. And, man, the Bears, for the first time, I can say this in a long time, they got some talent on offense. With Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, they've done a real good job constructing that team. How far the rookie quarterback will get you. Not everybody's C.J. Stroud.
Right.
C.J. was an anomaly to play like that. Jaden's a unique athlete. Martin, I've told you this before. He's the most humble star college player I've ever been around in 40 years.
That's
you would never know he's the guy.
It's incredible, but it's good.
And, comes from a good family. But Brian Kelly told me this, Mike, I got to run him out of the film room. I got to run him out of the practice sessions. Hey, you got to go. You can't stay here all the time. Now, when the head coach, and especially an older one like Kelly tells you that says a lot about him. He's a great fit for that and what they need in Washington. Man, it's been a long time since they've had anybody close to him. RG3 did it, but it was almost like a comet shot of a 1-year run, and then that was it. Man, he can run. But I did tell him this about a month and a half ago. I hope you learn how to slide. Because in the NFL, they're going to take your head off.
Well, and I think he's got a chip now on his shoulder that it didn't go #1. So he'll be proving to the world that he's just a superior athlete. But can it translate into quarterback? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and his problem was different from Caleb. Caleb did not like to take the 10-foot jumper or the layup. Always looking for the big play. Think about as a junior at LSU, Jaden always wanted to throw the little short stuff. He didn't want to throw the deep ball.
Right.
But he got better at it. He worked and worked and worked with the receivers.
He learned how to trust his receivers.
Trust himself, too.
Right.
That's right. I'm going to make that throw. And, man, look what Malik and Brian came up with, those 2 guys, 2 Louisiana guys going in round 1 with Malik Neighbors and bang, Brian Thomas Jr. And the thing about it is that almost was a third receiver, Keon Coleman. I scouted him. He was at Opelousas High School. But Coach O had run out of receiver scholarships. He goes to Michigan State. Then he goes to Florida State. He's the first pick in round 2. All 3 of those guys. So 3 receivers from Louisiana in the top 33. That's amazing.
We loaded at receiver.
Yes.
All right, let's do this. We'll take a break. We'll come back, our final segment with Mike Detillier. Good to have him here. We'll be right back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
And we're back talking football with Mike Detillier. And, of course, we appreciate Mike. He's always being tugged on all the time, but you bring a lot of gravity to this draft. Let's talk about the Saints, offense versus defense. Defensively, we made some pickups. We got a Nick Saban guy in there now, but defense going to be okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think with Dennis, as long as he's here, your defense is going to be fine. The problem's going to be on the offensive side of the football, and he had to change. And he finally made that decision. Though I'd have done it a year ago. I think he was a day late and buck sharp with that. But in picking up, and they had to move up to get him, Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I was telling you, I'm driving here. His high school coach calls me and says, listen, I'll come on with you guys. He said, man, I was such a bad coach in high school. He won me 2 state championships, Kool-Aid. And he played wide receiver, defensive back in high school. He said, I didn't know, he said, I played for Nick, how he would react to a guy constantly on you as a freshman. So he says 5 games into his freshman year, I look up, Kool-Aid starting for Alabama as a true freshman. So he started for 2.5 years.
That means he won Nick over.
He won Nick over, and he got a thick hide.
Yeah.
I mean, because listen, the one thing Nick is really tough on is defensive backs, because that's his area.
That's his deal, yeah.
And so he was telling us during the interview that every day he's in that meeting room with you, and it's either giving you instruction or chewing you out on what you made a mistake with. But he said he was also very good at, if he saw improvement, come over to tell you, hey, kid, you're getting it. You're getting it. Team leader, team captain at Alabama, Brian Thomas Jr. told me after the season, the toughest cornerback I ever played in college was Kool-Aid McKinstry. And he's tough. He's physical. Played a lot of press man coverage right on top of you. And he's aggressive. And when somebody made a mistake in the secondary for Alabama, it wasn't Nick that got on him. It was Kool-Aid.
Wow. So he's a leader.
He became the leader of that team. And we had Ryan Fowler on, who's covered Kool-Aid from his high school days, and he works at the flagship station of Alabama. And he's like, Alabama's team was not great last year. What? They went to the Final Four. Ryan, y'all spoiled. You complain about a Final Four team, but he said
take it. One
guy was great, and it was Kool-Aid, and we didn't even realize it. He was playing with a small fracture in his foot. I knew he didn't look quite as quick, but, I didn't know exactly what was wrong with him. He has the surgery. He'll miss a little bit of the OTAs, but he's made it clear to us. He told Deuce and I, come training camp, I'm going to see both of y'all because I'm going to be there.
Wow. That's cool. how about LSU? We got about 2.5 minutes left. What's LSU looking like?
I think offensively, it's going to look different. Okay, you had a running quarterback, and he can rush for 1,100 yards. Yeah. Okay, Garrett Nussmeier's not going to do that.
Right.
So you're going to have to rely more on your running game, the strength of this team, offensive line. They got a lot of good young receivers, but the star of the spring, just like Brian Kelly told me last spring, it was Brian Thomas Jr. Who was the star this spring? Kyron Lacey from Thibodeau High.
Yeah.
And so Kyron may be the next guy to emerge at LSU at wide receiver. My biggest concern for LSU, defensive tackle. They don't have talent or depth.
Wow. And that's a hard position to fill.
Not a lot of guys with their hands up in the air
Yeah.
that can play that spot.
You're right about that. But as you look at the overall synopsis, of course, if you talk to an LSU fan, and I love LSU too, they always think they're going to be in the national championship game. What's the chances next year?
If your defense can get better,
Yeah.
you got a shot. Okay, Alabama's not going to be as good. My thing is, what separated Nick? Wins in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Okay, you can play them close. All of a sudden, fourth quarter, they get you. And Georgia still is going to be the cream of the crop. I think Ole Miss has the best team they've had since Eli Manning's senior year. They're going to be really good. And I can't discount Texas.
Yeah, we
Coming into the SEC.
So we have a lot to watch. Mike, always appreciate.
Thank you, Martin.
coming by,
Appreciate it.
And glad for Mason Smith.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll see you down the road.
We'll do it.
All right. Once again, Mike Detillier joining us here on Bayou Time Sports. We appreciate his insight. And he's been doing this since he's in diapers, man. He knows he knows what it's all about. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we have a lot more in our HTV programming. Don't forget, check us out on the app and watch us anywhere in the world. We'll see you later. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.